The views and opinions expressed on this podcast are those of the speakers and do not necessarily reflect those of the ANA or its members. On today's episode of On Scope, author and marketing expert Doug Zarkin shares why you should probably stop treating your customers like morons. Also, in marketing news you might have missed, are we at a media extinction level event? All that next on Scope. Hello and welcome to On Scope, the marketing podcast brought to you by the ANA and powered by Odyssey, a leading audio streaming platform. You can get your favorite podcasts, music, and entertainment on the Odyssey app. I'm your host, Mike Berberich, and with me as always, Ryan Dinger, producer of On Scope. Ryan, what you got for me today, bud?
I got some interesting news you might have missed,
Ooh,
Mike. Here's
I love
the headline
this.
for you. It's from Marketing Dive. Media usage poised to dip in 2025. Media usage across both digital and traditional channels increased 2.4% globally in 2024 for an average of 57.2 hours a week, according to recent research by PQ Media. This increase was largely due to major televised events such as the Summer Olympics. However, the momentum isn't likely to continue, with growth expected to decline 0.3% in 2025, the first drop since 2009.
Woo.
Here's a quote for you. Quote, "The decline in 2025 is an indication that the gains in digital media are no longer compensating for the declines in traditional media use. In the last 40 years, we saw a plethora of new media platforms and channels that have driven media usage up substantially," said Leo Kivajarv, Executive Vice President and Director of Research at PQ Media.
That is kind of disconcerting on a few levels.
Mm-hmm.
First, I want to direct our listeners to 2009. That might not jump out at you as a remarkable year, but I'd like to remind everybody what happened in the second half of 2008.
Yeah, there was a little bit of an economic collapse,
Just
if I remember
a little
correctly.
bit of an economic collapse. So that explains why media spending went down in 2009.
Mm-hmm.
This is, like I said, not the best news I've ever heard.
No.
We've, digital has been picking up slack for traditional media for over a decade, over a decade. So that is slowing down. Are there any other symptoms? Are there any other kind of bellwethers that we're seeing from this?
Yeah, it's funny you ask, Mike. There is a bigger trend at play here. So, again, this is a quote from Kivajarv. Quote, "The annual Consumer Electronics Show hasn't introduced any mind-blowing new technologies in years, like the smartphone in the 2000s, early 2010s, that will drive media consumption up substantially into the 2030s. That's why media consumption patterns have peaked."
That media consumption patterns have peaked.
That's wild.
Yeah. That is wild. And kind of reminds me, if you read, besides the asteroid that came and killed the dinosaurs, extinction level events happen pretty gradually.
Mm-hmm.
And jeepers creepers, that just gives me a little bit of a chill that, okay, so new media isn't doing the lifting for you.
Yeah.
There's not a new screen on the horizon that's going to save us. We saw, we had the virtual reality conversation. That's not ready for prime time.
Mm-hmm.
Augmented reality is fun, but it's not an entire new dimension.
Right.
Marketers can't wait on the next technological advance and twiddle their thumbs.
Yeah, it seems like there's not one coming, according to Kivajarv. And, it makes me think about, okay, so how do you reinvent the playbook? What do you go back to? And maybe it's going back to the roots. Publicity stunts, in-person activations, experiential stuff, getting away from this, the worrying so much. Not that media is not something that needs to be part of the strategy. Of course it needs to be, but I think that, marketing is everywhere and nowhere all at once,
Yes.
right? And
Ooh,
that's
well said.
especially true in digital channels, on TV, on social media. There's a little bit of marketing, ad blindness going on. So how do you cut through that? And to me, it's in-person activations. I'm reminded, Mike, of, our offices here at the ANA. They're pretty close to Grand Central Station.
Yep.
And a few months back, Severance, which I'm sure if you're listening to the show, you're aware of the show Severance, did this whole activation where they set up the Severance set in Grand Central Station and had the actors come in and basically play like they were on the show for a bit. And, they did that for, I think it was 48 hours or so, different actors cycling in and out. That's the type of stuff that I think you're going to need to see brands do in order to sort of counteract the diminishing returns in media.
Yeah, and the beauty of experiential, a lot of people think of it through that Severance, the PR stunt, awareness, attention grabbing thing, but IRL works up and down the funnel.
Yeah.
Actually, our guest next week, Sherry Graziano, is the head of experience and marketing for Truist. And if you've ever had a chance to go down to Truist Park in Atlanta, that is a masterclass in how you carefully and thoughtfully craft an immersive brand experience. When you walk around that park, it's not intrusive, it's welcoming, it's informative. You talk about moving down the consideration and, preference journey. That is all fantastic. And I'm reminded of Corey Elliott, a fantastic guest.
Yes.
This isn't just for the Fortune 500. Like, small to medium business owners can get a lot from creating an event. You're welcoming people into your experience, and you're getting that information that people might be more willing to share with you than a landing page after they've shaken your hand and had a conversation. So everybody can get into the experiential act.
Yeah, well said, Mike. I would say, if you're a listener who's hearing this and it's alarming to you, and it should be, it's alarming to me, for sure, the screen is not going to save you. It's not going to be the thing that you can keep pushing that button and coming back to anymore. It's plateauing, and that may require a return to the marketing roots, get back into the beginning of the playbook and getting attention in ways that are outside of the digital and the traditional channels, and more of that in real life type stuff. Great job previewing next week's episode, by the way.
I try. But before we get ahead of ourselves, let's jump into my conversation with Doug Zarkin, author of Moving Your Brand Out of the Friend Zone. We're about to get serious about brand love on today's episode of On Scope. It is my pleasure to welcome to On Scope the one and only Doug Zarkin. He's a marketing leader. He is the author of Moving Your Brand Out of the Friend Zone, and he is going to help me have what I think is a very important conversation today. Doug, thanks so much for stopping by.
Thanks for having me, my friend. It's good to see you.
Oh, likewise. We met up, goodness gracious, was it last year, 2 years ago at Brand Masters, had a really fantastic conversation, and I think that I'm ready for round two because the experience of this podcast so far, a lot of the core tenets that we've been discussing, people will listen, of course. We wouldn't be talking about them if they were actually being executed and applied in the real marketing world. And I think one of the central concepts of moving your brand out of the friend zone is a perfect example of this. And I'm talking about thinking human, which I just love it in its simplicity, and that is treating every customer like they were your only customer.
Right.
Who's going to argue with that on a conceptual level? But from your perspective, where in the journey from the concept and the intentions to the execution do marketers usually stray from this approach?
Yeah, that's a great question. There are a number of touch points where there's vulnerability. And the vulnerability comes in really not because you want to be vulnerable, but because economics in a way sort of force you into that regard. So let's take the first place, which is sort of hours to sales guidelines. How many people do you have on the floor?
Yes.
It is really hard to treat every customer as if they're your only customer if you have a lot of customers coming in. And so the first place is from an operations perspective, really getting great data to start making some good decisions as to how many salespeople do you need to have on the floor on a Wednesday versus a Saturday. The second place is what I would say the biggest area of vulnerability is in the post-purchase experience. And here's why. We in the United States think about customer service as triage. In Japan, and I had the privilege of living in Japan for a month, they look at customer service as the opportunity to strengthen the relationship. So when it comes to things like warranties, I have a problem, something breaks, you can almost hear the person, if you're nice enough to be able to get somebody on the phone, reading from a playbook.
Yes.
And the thing is that it's not about a playbook, it's about a process. And that process has to be fluid. If it is day 31 and I have a 30-day warranty, you've got to treat the consumer a little bit differently than if it's day 131.
Yes.
If you're dealing with a product that costs $5, there's a different level of expectation of quality of service and care and maybe durability than if you're paying something that's $3,000. So it's being able to vacillate what you're doing for who you're doing it for and when in their purchase cycle they live. Regardless, though, it should be a human experience. It is not about a transaction, it is about a relationship. And so I think the post-purchase aspect is probably the most vulnerable, but it's also the easiest opportunity to win because we've been conditioned as people to expect the worst.
Yes.
To expect the bureaucracy. We have all walked by people screaming into their phone, representative, representative, or hitting 0 45 times to bypass all the automated. And the automated stuff is not there to stop you. It is there with best intention.
Oh, yeah.
But it doesn't work. So I think post-purchase is probably the greatest area of vulnerability.
That is fantastic. And that is so, I mean, in one point, it makes sense why maybe, well, we got the purchase, so da-da-da-da. But to your point, like, that's where they're now, like, your fan, your user, your person, like, you've got them, you know, up to the point of consideration and purchase, they're a maybe, but that you don't leverage the opportunity of a yes.
It is so much more expensive to get a new customer than to keep an existing one. And yet we forget it in the economics, except when you look to things like lifetime value.
Yeah.
Okay, the lifetime value of a customer is not a metric that is very high on many brands' radar screen, especially brands that are in the commodities business. And it really should be. It should be right up there with cost per acquisition. It should be right up there with sales. It should be up there with operating income. The greatest misses happen from when your existing customer base abandons you, not necessarily, in my opinion, from new customers coming in.
Yeah, no, I love that. And I love that you brought up that this is like an economical issue. We're not talking.
Oh, this isn't altruism.
Yeah.
No, this isn't warm and fuzzy.
Exactly.
This is about math.
Yes.
You know, the math has to math. And I think if you look at your entire customer platform, new versus existing always gets the short end of the stick. I mean, let's take enrolling in a cell phone carrier. Okay, the best deals come when they try to bring you in. But when you renew, they say to you, well, that was our introductory promotion pricing. Now it's going to go up by 35%. But why?
Yeah.
Why? You've done a good job treating me. I want to reward you by my loyalty. Why is it going to cost me 30% more to get the exact same service? I understand you may need to raise it, but certainly don't make it prohibitive where I go deal shopping.
Yeah. And I mean, and the funny thing is, I think a lot of organizations spend time training their people on how to explain that versus, well, can we change this to make it not a sticker shock, to make it like, because if it goes up 10, 15%, okay. But you're so right. And I think that there are actually resources deployed on how do you diplomatically tell somebody they're not getting that 35%. And I have hardly any resources deployed in how do we make this workable to our existing customers.
It is understandable that you're going to have attractive pricing to get somebody in. But, you know, when I talk about this in the book, discounts and deals doesn't build trust. Okay. What builds trust is a series of small moments in care and connection. If you come to me and say, listen, your promotional pricing is over. I need to raise your pricing. The best deal I have raises it 5%, 7%. But understand why. As a consumer, I may not be happy, but I'm not going to abandon you.
Yeah.
If it goes from $20 to $120, then I'm going to say, no, bye-bye. I'm going to go somewhere else. Unless you are curing cancer or have solved some massive problem in my life, I'm going to abandon you, because we live in a culture today where idea to execution is faster than ever.
Yeah.
And so there is always somebody knocking on your door for your dollars.
Well said. So I wanted to kind of bring this back, that you touched on. There's like a bit of nuance and a lot of humanity in all of this. The Ritz-Carlton is often hailed as like, this is how they do it. They've got an allocated budget to fix problems. That is as operationalized in the humanity and treating people right as you can get. And it's not a realistic thing for everything, especially if you're in the CPG, in that $5 product area. But how can businesses empower their employees to do the right thing while still maintaining governance over their organization? You know, how do you operationalize this customer empathy when you can't just be like, well, here's the dollars to spend it? Because, you know, in my mind, that 31-day warranty example, there are organizations where somebody might get in trouble for giving that 1 day of grace and for turning that customer into an advocate. How do you operationalize that?
So the thing with the Ritz-Carlton that you're referring to me, it's not about solving a problem. It's about stopping a problem from happening. It's about keeping the emotional level at a reasonable level, because it is impossible to have a rational conversation with an emotional person. And when problems happen, we tend to get very emotional. And that could be my meal is undercooked. That could be I'm waiting online. That could be I'm waiting for a table. Or it could be something much more significant. What the Ritz-Carlton understands, and I think they do it as well as anybody, is that we want our associates, whether they're in the cleaning crew or at the front desk, to be the arbiters of our brand, the ambassadors of our brand. The single most important marketing tool that a marketer has in their toolbox are their frontline associates.
1,000%.
And so if you empower them to represent your brand, you should also empower them to stop something from escalating. I think businesses that are in a little bit more of a commodities category, it's all in the approach. And I'll give you a good example. So I live in Long Island, okay? My family and I have been going to this neighborhood diner since my kids were very little. And is the food good? Yeah, the food's fine. But to me, what demonstrated that we mattered to them was when my kids were little. And we'd come in, we'd have 2 kids, we'd have a stroller, we'd have a car seat. And kids come with stuff. They don't tell you that when you have them. They come with a lot of stuff. And the waiter would always seat us at a table for 6. And I finally said to him, listen, I'm hurting your business because you're putting me at a table. He goes like, yeah, but you have stuff. He's like, I want you to be comfortable. I want you to have a great experience. There may be an opportunity cost, but the fact that I'm there a lot, and here I am now, my kids are teenagers, and we still go back as a family because they know us, that familiarity is something that you really can't pay for. Just simply bringing like a refill, a free refill. And again, it's not about the cost. It's about the fact that like, I don't want you to think about it. Brands that are selling commodities, brands that are selling low price of entry products still have an opportunity to surprise and delight. Open up another register. It's another example I talk about in the book. If you see the register line, have the assistant manager be empowered to open up another register. Have somebody be able to call and say, listen, I need more help. Just being able to stop being so rigid, be more fluid, be more human. You will surprise and delight your customer where price doesn't become as big an issue. Where price becomes an issue is when service is bad. And I talk about something in the book called the brand value equation. Whether you're making $50, $500, or $5 million a year, everybody wants value. And value equals the experience as your numerator divided by the price you pay as the denominator. You're not thinking about the cost of your hotel room at the Ritz-Carlton when they address you by name, when they bring you a cold drink, when the towels are fluffy, when there's a lounge chair and you don't have to run down early in the morning. Except when you go to a hotel for a business trip and it may be $199, but the towel's really small and the Wi-Fi doesn't work and there's a rattle in the air conditioner, then you're more upset. Even though your denominator was less, your experience isn't great. So if you can dial up experience, you can really make price not go away, but become less of an issue.
Yeah. And that is kind of nirvana for brands. And I'm glad that you touched on a couple of those things because this can't purely be a marketing play. This isn't going to happen through messaging. There needs to be some operational changes and considerations made. And when we come back, I'd like to talk about how you explain and champion brand love and the value of all of this to the rest of the C-suite. So hang on and we'll be right back. Hey, buddy.
Yeah, what is it?
Everything cool?
Yeah, you know, Mike, it's just there's something eating away at me a little bit.
Talk to me, man.
I'm enjoying this episode with Doug so much, learning about how to do right by your customers, personalization, brand touch points. I'm loving it. Frankly, I'm a little upset there's only like 15 minutes of the conversation left.
That's fair. This typically does come at the halfway point, doesn't it?
I want more.
I get you.
Yeah.
I get you.
Yeah.
And I think a lot of marketers feel the same way. They just want all of it. We're shaping their minds. They want all of it.
Yeah, I want a 24-hour episode with Doug. Maybe multi-day on this stuff.
You know what? I think I have just the answer for you.
Really?
And it comes in the form of the 2025 A&A Masters of Marketing Conference in Orlando, Florida.
Oh, please tell me more.
I would absolutely love to tell you more. This is your next stop, and it's where the world's top marketers come together to share bold ideas, real strategies, and breakthrough insights that drive brand and business growth, baby.
Wow, that sounds exactly like what I'm looking for right now.
It's like the podcast exploded into a very nice resort in Florida.
Yeah.
And it's everywhere you can see.
I love it.
Okay.
I love it. Well, so when does it happen?
I love sheepers creepers. It's like we have the same brain.
Please tell me. I'm anxious to know.
Yes. Well, it is happening October 21st through the 24th. Like I said, in Orlando and virtually, but you gotta be there. If you've ever been to Masters, you know what that experience is like.
And that's plenty of time to plan. That's great news.
Exactly.
Yeah.
You can just drive down there if you want. You probably hike down there at this point. I wouldn't recommend it. I wouldn't recommend it. But make your way down there and don't miss your chance to be part of marketing's most powerful event. Ryan, if you want to take a look at the venue, the agenda, you want to get yourself pumped up, head on over to ana.net/masters. And now, back to our show.
Thanks for the help there, buddy.
I'm always here for you, man. We are back with my friend Doug Zarkin, author of Moving Your Brand Out of the Friend Zone. And so we've been talking, and I think as marketers, we are given the responsibility to be the voice of the customer. So I think a lot of the conversation we're having, marketers nodding their head, yes, of course, I can see this is the long-term value. This is how you get lifetime customers. But where this might run into a little bit of friction, because we were talking like this isn't free, this isn't changing your tagline. This has operational circumstances, which means you need the buy-in of the entire organization, and for almost every organization that starts at the very top at the C-suite. So how do marketers communicate the importance of putting the customer first to their peers in the C-suite? And, doing so in a way that's going beyond the check boxes.
Yeah. So I don't really think about this as a marketing conversation. I think about this in the way that I approach it, and why I wrote the book was more about a general management. Marketers, operations leaders, sales leaders, if they make the business personal, if they think about the business from a P&L perspective, and I've been lucky in the course of my career, in most of my senior level marketing roles, I've been given significant P&L responsibility. You can start to gain alignment because you're not just looking at, well, what is my cost per acquisition? What are my advertising or marketing KPIs? It's about what my business KPIs are. Marketing without operations is really nothing more than just words on paper. And so inspiring the rest of the leadership organization to believe has to start with really having good data. If you don't have good data, you will never get a shared understanding. Now, the thing is with good data, like any data, is that the data isn't going to make the decision for you. You're going to make the decision using data because the data is only as good as the questions that you ask.
Yes. Oh, let's go.
And so the way that you start to bring alignment is to ensure that the questions that we're asking are ones that we are all curious about. that we all believe are valuable. That to me is where things can go really well or things can go sideways. A belief in putting the customer at the center of the business has to come from the CEO.
Yeah.
Yes. While the chief brand officer, chief marketing officer is the chief brand evangelist, is the voice of the customer. If your CEO does not believe in a customer-centric model, this is all a waste of time. And it's unfortunate because you can have a really good sense of leadership alignment. But if the CEO, the one who is representing the organization to the outside world, who's ultimately making those decisions, doesn't truly believe in the voice of the customer, and importantly, doesn't trust the data that they're seeing because they're not trusting the questions that are being asked are the right ones, you're never going to be able to move the business forward. So I would start with ensuring that there is a shared understanding of what questions that we're asking. Mm-hmm. Then there has to be a belief in the data. And that's not about questioning the integrity of the data as much as it is questioning, are we measuring the right things?
Yep.
You should really be measuring no more than 5 things.
Interesting.
Okay. And the reason is because if you're measuring more than 5 things, you're spending less than 20% of your time. How are you going to move anything with really limited focus? Mm-hmm. And so focus is critical. Marketing is about positioning, which is about the art of sacrifice. In business, the relationship with the customer should never be where you sacrifice.
Yeah.
Sacrifice other things. Don't sacrifice the customer. And that could mean, hey, listen, we need to add more salespeople. This means maybe we need to be more personal in our communication. This means maybe we have to stop doing things that we think are important, but the customer is telling us that they're.
Yeah. Dude, you touched on so much right there. Just 2 things I want to highlight before we go any further. I absolutely love that you termed it as the questions we're asking. Mm-hmm. I think so many people, because those answers, whether they're hypothetical, whether they're, well, let's find out, that's what an insight is.
Right.
You know what I mean? I think so many people go data, maybe observation, and then, okay, well, we got our insights. But like the curiosity behind that, the digging behind that, the questions you're asking, that is where you're going to actually find anything of any worth that's going to resonate with people on a human level. And the idea of the measurement of cutting it down to 5 things, I think art is limitation. I think that's a brilliant discipline, even if it's, you've got a super hybrid B2C, B2B, and maybe there's a 6th one.
Yeah.
Focusing in on that is going to be such a force multiplier. And the other thing is, if measurement's the goal, if you're measuring 30 things, measurement becomes the goal, You've lost the plot completely.
So sort of soundbite-ish, because it can be measured doesn't necessarily mean it's meaningful.
Yeah.
And especially when you're running e-com businesses, you've got to be very disciplined in what you're measuring. That doesn't mean that you then don't click in.
Yes.
So your core 5 is where you start.
Yes.
When you identify that one of those variables or more is concerning, then you click down. Mm-hmm. Then you look.
Yes.
But having your team laser focused on the 5 key things that matter, and one of those things has to be people. Mm-hmm. It has to be leadership. Imagine working for an organization that doesn't put leadership and development as a core thing.
Yeah, that is just...
I mean, because as good as we are and as smart as every CBO, CMO is, you're only as good as the people you surround yourself with. If there's one superpower that perhaps I think I have, it's in the ability to build teams. It's identifying talent and getting them to have that shared understanding and move forward together. It's not only necessity, it's also a lot more fun. Yeah. Climbing the mountain alone, you maybe get there faster, but then you're taking a selfie. Climbing the mountain with a group of people, you may get there smoother, but more importantly, you're taking that group pic at the top. Yeah. And that is really where I think you as a leader learn as you mature the importance of team. They don't teach you that in grad school. Mm-hmm. They teach you to go out, kick ass, take names.
Yep.
Only through trial and error, only through being a bad leader do you understand the importance of being a good leader.
Yeah. Oh, God, that's well said. And I mean, it speaks to the idea of people who come in and they've got their ideas and they think that's all they need. Like, ideas aren't worth shit. And that's from an idea guy. But I love the humanity of that. Like, a team with a kind of okay idea is going to go so much further than like the perfectly honed idea by oneself.
You have feelings and facts. Both are important, but they're not equal.
Yeah.
The challenge really becomes in when a feeling is thought of as a fact and you go down a rabbit hole, that's a death sentence.
Yeah.
Being able to discern what is a feeling versus a fact allows you to work a lot smarter, not necessarily harder, and move at what I call the speed of smart. And the speed of smart is really about understanding the discipline to get from A to Z. There is no time sequence. Some things can go very quickly. Some things need to go very slowly. Some things need to just go. And I think part of that C-suite alignment that has to start with the CEO is in being able to recognize what is an absolute must-do versus what is a want-to-do. Resourcing, prioritizing, et cetera, those things are really important, especially as you build your P&L.
Yeah. Man, that's extraordinarily well said. This is a repeat listen episode. I'm calling it right now before we're even done with this. But before I let you go into this beautiful day we have here, I think I'd be remiss in my job if we didn't bring up the 600-pound robot gorilla in the room.
Right.
AI, we've been talking a lot about it in a lot of different facets on the show. Obviously, you need to be up to date on this. Obviously, you need to be paying attention to it. The people who get it right are going to have an exponential advantage, but we've already seen AI human interaction go terribly, terribly wrong at the detriment of anything you think you're getting in efficiency. As AI continues to proliferate and enter every corner of the marketing function and really every corner of the business function in our lives, how do you balance tech integration and driving and maintaining an authentic and human relationship with your individual customers?
So FOMO is not a marketing strategy.
Let's go.
Okay.
One more time for the people in the back.
FOMO is not a marketing strategy.
Thank you.
Okay. AI, while it's a necessity, is still about innovation. And the first two letters of the word innovation stand for insight. AI has to be approached, in my opinion, and feel free, I'm breaking the fourth wall, disagree with me, has to be approached from what is the insight that you have uncovered. I happen to think one of the greatest opportunities with AI is about internal utilization, creating a shared understanding learning hub. So again, let's go to the world of e-com. If I have 10,000 products that I'm selling, it is impossible for everybody to know everything about every product. You can build an AI information hub where all of that information is there. So if somebody wants to research vitamin D, as an example, they will get the talking points that the company is talking about relative to vitamin D. And take that to fashion, take it to beauty, take it to apparel. AI is not necessarily about customer facing all the time. It starts with the ability to work smarter internally. The other thing is that think back 15 years ago, 20 years ago, probably more 15 years ago, where everybody felt like they had to have an app. If you were to pull out your phone right now, okay, you probably have 60 apps on your phone. You probably use 10 of them regularly. Think about all the money that went into building those apps. Okay, so it's not necessarily because you can, it's because you should, or more importantly, because you need to. AI is a must-do. How you use it is completely subjective. Do I love the idea of AI developing creative for me in absentia? No. But AI, much like programmatic was when programmatic launched, is about the inputs you put into the algo.
Yes.
The inputs come from people. So if you have a brand voice and you want to spit out creative that reflects that brand voice, use AI to help you do that. But you have to enter the right data in order to get output that is reflective, because you are right. It can go horribly, horribly wrong. AI can allow us to be more personal if it's done well. If it's not done well, it could go incredibly sideways. And a customer today is more apt at understanding when something is auto-generated than ever. Why? Because of deep fakes. Why? Because every other story on the news is about somebody who's doing something with this. We just saw Coca-Cola did its first advertising generated by AI. Was not really well received.
Yeah.
Okay. The intent I love. Okay. But I don't necessarily know if that's where I would have gone with it. So again, I don't think there's a rule book. I don't think there is a playbook. You got to work the play into your playbook. How you do it is completely subjective. I would rather be a lot more methodical. I would rather start internally first to see if I can bring the shared understanding of my business and my brand up, possibly then going into segmentation, okay, number crunching, analysis. But again, you've got to look at that analysis like, how does it feel to my gut?
Yeah.
Because the instinct of a leader is never something that should go away.
Mm.
Every entrepreneur, every visionary didn't necessarily have data to prove that they should invent something. They had an instinct to approve it.
Yep.
And so losing that instinct can happen. AI will not ever replace instinct. It will help you to get smarter faster. It'll help you to be more productive. It should help you to have a lot more options at your disposal. But done wrong, it could set you back pretty bad.
Yeah. These are very nice condenser mics, so I'm not going to drop one, but I think that was the mic drop moment of the interview. Everybody, go out, get your copy of Moving Your Brand Out of the Friend Zone wherever you shop for fine literature. Doug Zarkin, this has been such a pleasure. Thanks, you for stopping by.
I appreciate it, bud. And by fine literature, you mean Amazon.
Yeah, you know. Here we are again, another episode of On Scope, the marketing podcast in the books. I want to thank my guest, Doug Zarkin, for what I consider to be a repeat-worthy episode. We covered a lot of ground and shared a lot of insights on how to treat your customers with respect. As a reminder, if you have an idea for a topic or guest for a future show, shoot us a note. We would love to hear from you. That email address, onscope@ana.net. And, as usual, here is your moment of marketing meditation. Take a deep breath, relax your shoulders, and consider the following from writer Bryant H. McGill. One of the most sincere forms of respect is actually listening to what another has to say. Think on that, and we'll see you next week.